Recovery Sort Of is a podcast where we discuss recovery topics from the perspective of people living in long-term recovery. This podcast does not intend to represent the views of any particular group, organization, or fellowship. The attitudes expressed are solely the opinion of its contributors. Be advised, there may be strong language or topics of an adult nature.
Welcome back. It's Recovery Sort Of. I am Jason, and I am in favor of marijuana legalization.
And I'm Billy. I'm a person in long-term recovery.
I'm Caroline. I'm also a person in long-term recovery.
And we're talking about the idea of legalizing marijuana. Why? Because, as we record, Election Day in Maryland is 2 days away, and we are voting on this on our actual ballot. But there's still states out there that have not legalized or have not recreationally legalized. So I think it's still an important conversation. And even for people in Maryland, after the election, once we find out the results of whether it is recreationally legal or not, there's still concerns on both sides of that, right? I think there's still issues and things to talk through, and I don't know. I guess that's where we're coming from. So does everybody have like an initial stance of where you stand on it? I mean, I obviously, I'm for it. Like, sure, legalize it. Why not? What do we have to lose?
Yeah, and typically most of my views on that kind of stuff are more libertarian. So I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Let adults do what adults want to do.
Okay.
Is that a problem?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I saw the sign.
Like Ace of Base?
That this was going to be,
it opened up your eyes. And,
a topic for voting on this coming Tuesday. 3, 4, 5 days ago. So I had no idea until very recently.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm not that tuned in with the marijuana legislation.
Should be a top priority.
Doesn't super impact my life.
I'm surprised you weren't all over that one.
Nope. I will say I don't. I maybe feel a little stronger in one direction than the other after having done some research of my own for this conversation. But prior to this, I was conflicted. I could not have told you for sure which way I would vote on it. So
okay, well, now that you've done the research, which way are you leaning?
I think I'm leaning in favor of it.
Okay.
I think for me, when I was thinking about like what would be the clear yes for me would be if they were going to simultaneously outlaw alcohol.
Ooh.
Then it's a clear and easy answer.
That's interesting.
For me, I think one of the things there were a couple of things that swayed me as I was doing research, but one was there was a study that shows that alcohol use decreases in states that have legalized.
Mm-hmm.
I think alcohol is terrible, quite honestly. So, anything that keeps people from drinking as much.
Oh, see, I'm the whole, like, everybody should just be able to do whatever they want. Fucking heroin should be legal. All drugs should just be legal, and adults should be able to do what adults do.
The problem is adults doing whatever they want impacts other people in the community, and alcohol has a lot of
right, but
really
you punish
negative.
them for those things, not for using, like, if I want to have a party at my house and we all want to trip on LSD and run around the backyard naked and we don't hurt anybody, that should be fine.
Awesome, right.
That should be completely fine and totally legal.
What's the date for that? I don't want to miss it.
If we go out into the neighborhood and start vandalizing people's property or spray painting on the fucking local school, you know what I mean? Then we get in trouble for that.
But I think we know that people getting in trouble, especially for alcohol-related or exacerbated crimes, doesn't actually stop those crimes from happening. Like, people are still driving drunk very regularly. People are still beating their wives, beating their children.
I mean, if you take a step, I almost did some vandalism recently, by the way. Like 2 months ago, I was driving somewhere and there was this large setup of like haystacks. And there was 2 of them. One was brown and one was covered in the white marshmallow things you see them covered in sometimes. Okay. And the one that was brown was decorated and set up like real huge, like a 30-foot teddy bear or something. And I was like, that's so cute. But the white one was just white. And I was like, but it was set up the same way. And I was like, I'm waking my son up at like 3 a.m. We're going to come over here and paint some eyeballs and a mouth on this motherfucker, right? Maybe. Is it on that 274 or whatever?
I don't know, one of the Joseph highways.
Yeah. So I thought about it. And then I was like, I'm old and tired. I'm not waking up at 3 a.m. And then like 2 days later, they had painted it. So I was I'm glad we didn't fuck it up.
Shout out to Giffords.
Yeah, almost did some vandalism in my old age. No, so the idea with alcohol, you're giving somebody a sentence that is supposed to keep their logical brain, their prefrontal cortex, from being able to, say, oh, yeah, last time I did this happened, and then I got this consequence. I don't like that. But you're doing that, and then you're giving them one drink, which is going to impair their ability to use that prefrontal cortex, and then they're having a second drink because the first one felt good. So I don't know that consequences for behaviors done on alcohol actually work at all.
No, they don't at all.
Like, they seem kind of totally useless. So what? I'm about to solve alcohol problem. Be like, well, what could we do for these alcohol people? Then we're talking about weed today. God damn it! There's pot on the brain.
But then that brings up a good question: is does the same apply with smoking pot?
Can people make rational decisions on smoking pot?
I mean, it's like most drugs. I think depends on how much. You know what I mean? Like at some point, we know it impairs your thinking, but to what level and what degree depends on what you're actually doing. Are you playing video games? Who cares?
Yeah,
Are you running a fucking machinery making trucks at, the GMC factory? You might cut off someone's finger.
And it's interesting from working with some people who do use medical marijuana, and my preconceived notions before that of like, oh, these motherfuckers just getting high, right? Like stuff like that. And then seeing them on it and not on it is very, very interesting. It's like a neat experience. To some people seem, honestly, like it. Okay, there's at least two people I see that if they were doctors and they were like the surgeon that was going to perform surgery on me, I'm telling both of them to fucking use weed first. Like, they are just more put together people, and I'm like, honestly, I hope you're using this when you drive, because like, I don't want to see you on the road without it. I feel like that's a weird angle that most people don't get, and I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck to make of it half the time. I'm like, I don't know, smoke your weed.
So does the pot bring them up to normal levels of functioning, or
it lowers their nervous system's response to everything? So your nervous system isn't like tuned up when you come into the world. You get that from whatever your caregiver's going through, right? So if you're sitting next to your caregiver who's usually really calm and they get really fucking scared, as a kid, you're going to be really fucking scared because you don't know what's happening, but that's not good. Right. So we get tuned in to people with mistuned nervous systems. So basically, your body is going to have an alarm system on it. That's your nervous system. It filters everything through, dangerous or not. If it gets mistuned, you could have that alarm system sensitivity jacked up to 11, where every time a fucking leaf blows around you, you are triggered and in a survival state,
and
which
that can
could be
even
your whole
be
day.
In the womb, like when your mother's still carrying you.
Or it can be mistuned the other way, where it's at 0 and there's fucking tanks at your front door and you're like, we're safe, we're good. But the marijuana seems to inhibit that nervous system response some, which I admittedly could be dangerous in a dangerous situation when you need it.
Like a surgeon.
No. Surgeon, you want calm.
Yeah.
Right?
Rational.
Right. You want them in a safe place. But if you were in an actual, like, if somebody pulls out a gun in an alley, might not be the best time to be on marijuana. Might be. Maybe you can make a clearer decision because
almost
you're calm.
Almost what you see on the weed smoking like movies where they always have the dude in the alley, like the gangs getting ready to beat him up. They're like, "Whoa, dude, take a chill."
Right. So it might not be terrible either. But basically, it inhibits that nervous system overaction and allows people to be in this calmer place. And that's from there, like that's where healing and growth happens. So I think that's what's helping them in the world. It's just putting them in a place where they can, like, instead of their kid crying because they spilled their milk and the person flips out and is like yelling at the kid while they're wiping the floor frantically, it's more like, shit. All right, let me get a towel. You know what I mean? Like, it just gives them the ability to have that proper reaction in the moment instead of the disproportionate overreaction that we usually have. I don't know. So it's really fascinating. But yeah.
It was just interesting. I was wondering, the reason for that question was, these two individuals you were speaking of, are they low functioning and less low functioning now, or were they already kind of like normal functioning and the pot has, made them super high? Like, just where was their baseline?
Well, and this is where I think being a therapist gets really weird and I'm noticing this more and more as we have more of these conversations on here, because you guys are like, we don't know that shit. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. It's weird to watch how people present in the world to everyone else and then have them come in for an hour and tell you everything that's going on behind the scenes of what everybody else is actually seeing. Because I feel like we all have the ability to look at this in ourselves. Like people will say, oh man, your life looks great. You got a nice job, kids, wife, whatever, right? But on the inside, we feel out of our fucking minds sometimes. And I think it's interesting to watch that in other people. Like the world probably perceives them as, oh yeah, they're put together, they're fine. But then they come in and like you see what's really going on internally while they're presenting as fine. And you're like, fuck, our society is fucked.
Yeah.
Like this is what's going on inside of everybody, and we are fucked because we're all out here pretending that it's something else.
Well, and that's a lot of our coping strategies. Our coping strategies of how to function in the world, they aren't all healthy, though.
No,
Just because we can function in the world doesn't mean that we're doing it in a really mentally or spiritually healthy way.
Right. I mean, look, I got through life without an antidepressant for a lot of years, right? But when I look at how I got through it after having the experience of getting through my life on an antidepressant, I can look back and say, fuck, I needed something back then, right? I was keeping it together. People thought I had my shit together, but my life looked fucked up internally. And I don't think we give enough credence to that. We don't give it enough importance. Like, I think a lot of us are unhappy, even though our lives look put together or successful or whatever. We're just not happy. So what the fuck good is success? But we are way off the topic of pros and
For me, a
cons.
lot of the legalization argument of legalizing everything comes around to a couple points that I think are pretty obvious at this point. One, whatever policies we have around addiction and substance use and our whole legal system right now have fucking failed.
Yes.
Like, you just look at any major city or any
Good place to
area,
start.
and whatever we're doing now is a fail. Like,
Okay.
we're not helping a lot of people. I mean, we're helping people, but I mean, the crime rates are going up, drug use and dependence rates are going up. So our current approach isn't going to fix anything.
Right.
So kind of, to me personally, throwing that out and starting at a different place of where, look, let's just let people use and then figure out, all right, why are you using it in excess? And what things can we do to stop your excessive using? Or what things can we do to get you functionally well in society? Like, that to me seems like a better place to start. But as long as we have things illegal and you get locked up for possession and all that, you know, it's puts all this shame, it puts all this black market stuff, you know what I mean, into the mix. And
man, if only the 12-step program or the members of it could have that open view of like, how can we just stop people from having unhealthy practices and not worry about anything else? Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point to make at the beginning of this, right? Like, I too buy in. Whatever the fuck we're doing, it ain't working, right? So if anything, I am definitely a proponent of change, right? I'm all about, like, we need to get on board with changing something. So I think I will probably buy into things or implementing programs that and ultimately fail or don't work or show us that they don't work just because I know what we're doing now doesn't work. I lean towards, yeah, fucking change it. Let's just try anything at this point. So I think that's a good thing to have in people's minds before we start talking about, like, this is a pro, this is a con. Like, do you believe what we're doing right now is working? That's a good place to start. If you do, maybe this episode isn't for you. If you believe in change or that what we're doing isn't working, then maybe that is a good starting point for, like, okay, is this the right change to make in this scenario? What comes up first before we even look through, like, the kind of pros and cons we've looked into, or maybe this is drawn from pros and cons you've already researched, but what comes up, like, first thing when you think of negative impacts of legalizing recreational marijuana? Like, what will happen that's bad?
okay, so for me, my two immediate fears would be more access for adolescents and underage
That's
people.
interesting.
I know if you look at alcohol right now, as terrible as it is, it's the most abused and causes the most deaths and, you know, is affiliated with the most crime, you know, all that stuff, because it's easily available. You know, when I was 16, 17 years old, I didn't have a hard time getting access to alcohol. As marijuana becomes legal, that same problem is going to come up when it's everywhere and easy to get. It's going to be everywhere and easy for kids to get.
I think I had an easier time getting weed than alcohol at 17 because I didn't have to have somebody to buy it for me. Like, I could just go make the purchase myself. I couldn't go to the establishment and buy the alcohol, but I could go to the dealer and buy the weed. Like, it was harder for me to find that intermediary person to buy the alcohol for me than it was to
Oh, yeah, but I guess I'm thinking there was always access at a friend's house or a parent's house or
yes,
someone.
yeah.
There was alcohol always around.
It's that country boy shit.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those things where it's like it's a little hard to exactly know what the end result will be, and there's an argument on both sides.
Of what? More access for teens?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I found it interesting when I was doing the little bit of research I did for this, that teen usage was in there. I guess it doesn't shock me quite as much anymore because it does seem to be our society's focus. We'd like to justify everything by like, is it good for the children?
Yes, there's a big focus on
It
that.
is, and it drives me crazy. And I have kids, and I still think that's fucking stupid. But I'm just thinking about my kids right now, and like, it does not concern me that marijuana would be more accessible to them. Like, that's not a huge fear of mine. What about you? What comes up for you?
As like a major downside, it's a little hard to kind of rewind back and separate out some of the stuff I learned through doing research to where I was prior to that.
That's all right.
I will say I think for me, you were talking about like coming from a place of like what we're doing is not working and being in favor of any change. I agree what we're doing as a society is not working.
Mm-hmm.
But I come from a place of like,
let's make smart change,
no.
not just any change.
No.
You don't
I
just
come
blow
from-
shit
I
up
come
and then
from a
start
place
over.
I come from a place of like,
Drugs are
drugs
bad.
are bad.
Okay.
Yes, drugs are bad. Yeah, and I think, that's just, I mean,
Mm.
I destroyed my
I
life
think
with
drugs
drugs,
are
and then I
amazing.
came to NA, and I came to NA young. So I got indoctrinated, right? Of like, don't pick it up, it won't get in you.
It's a cult.
Drugs ruin your life. And so it's very hard. Like I'm definitely, pot for me is the one that's more questionable because I do believe that it's much less detrimental to people and society than alcohol is. But if it were up to me, like probably all of it would just be illegal and people would learn to fucking function without
Really?
a substance. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
The drugs are bad argument is always fascinating to me from where I'm at now because I'm like, we probably all sitting here take drugs every day. Something.
Right.
Right? So, I mean, I took headache medicine a couple days ago and it was glorious. It got rid of my fucking headache
Yeah,
and my
it's like, to me,
backache.
drugs are drugs. They're not good or
Right.
bad.
And that's why, like, and
And I'm
really
super in favor of
fascinating.
medication too. I'm
Yeah.
like, if it's going to help, take it.
Well,
So it
and
is a
why do
little
we
bit of that,
classify
like-
It's that social acceptability
Yeah.
piece.
Well, and
that's
it's
weird.
the mood or mind altering piece. I think too is for me the differentiation.
Everything's
Well, the
fucking mood or mind
differentiation
altering.
even of the same fucking drug. If we look at like opioid-based, painkillers, it's like heroin's fucking terrible, but whatever other Oxycontin or that shit's fucking completely fine.
Right.
I guess they're not opiate-based, but they're
They're
synthetically,
opiates. Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, who it comes from
Mhm.
categorizes whether
Right.
it's good or bad, even when it's the same goddamn thing.
Well, that's what they did with the weed for many years now is they took the chemical compound that it was, made something really similar to it that wasn't illegal, put it on the market and sold it. And like, we don't know what that shit's doing either. Like that's probably less safe than the actual
Right.
fucking thing that grows out of the ground in the first place. And
Right.
An example of that, like what are they doing that
They
with?
had a couple of things. I don't remember the names of them because I never really got into it, but they were selling it at gas stations. And it was
the bath
basically
salts and shit.
Well, yeah, they had the bath salts, but they had like knockoff weed, and I think it was basically different variations of what they have now. This Delta 8 or whatever
Yeah.
THC that is like slightly different and not as effective. But I mean, you don't know what else is in that shit. So it's like basically people are going to find these ways and means, even if it's through household products, right? I don't know that eliminating drugs, and then it's
Yeah,
like,
and
how do
maybe
you
not.
classify
Right?
ruling them all illegal because that would make the entire medical field fall apart if we just said drugs are illegal.
But not all drugs, not the good drugs that I take to.
Yeah,
Well,
but what's the
see,
difference
to
between
get
heroin and
better
Oxycontin?
faster?
Like,
The thing, people, if you look back over history, thousands of years, people have been using different chemical substances to alter their mental states for different reasons. First, a lot of cultures, it was like religious experiences were based around these, whatever, psychedelics or different drugs that they used, or alcohol was assimilated with religion, things like that. And back then, they didn't have like the substance abuse problems that we have now.
They had
So
connection.
it seems like to me, if you look, it's way more culturally driven, and the fact that we are now so sick as a society are what drives a lot of the problems.
Yeah.
The idea of just being able to go home and like completely check out. I mean, we think about this now with all the technology stuff. Like we're totally into, oh, you can go home and put on a VR headset and pretend you're in fucking Japan or do some therapeutic, meditation thing that gives you all these visuals and all that stuff. I mean, we're going to do that with technology. Why not just be able to take some fucking acid or mushrooms and lay outside and watch the stars and have that experience? Like that could be a very natural, neat, interesting experience, if it's not shrouded in all this like shame and illegal and whatever. This episode has been brought to you in part by Voices of Hope, Inc., a nonprofit recovery organization made up of people in recovery, family members, and allies. Together, members strive to protect the dignity of those that use drugs and those in recovery by advocating for treatment, harm reduction and support resources, and mentoring. Please visit us at www.voicesofhopemaryland.org and consider donating to our cause.
I think Caroline said something really, really interesting to me. You said, I'm all for the medicinal drugs, anything that can help me get better faster. That's exactly what drugs do.
Yeah.
They fixed all of us they were our solution, right? We felt bad inside our bodies and we went to them and they created.
Make us get better though. They were
and let me just say, for me personally, even if they legalize everything tomorrow, I'm still not doing them. I mean, that's the way it is for me. But that's
right, because we don't drink
choice.
alcohol; it's
right.
legal, so that doesn't change anything.
I'm
from
sorry,
no, that's all right.
Point.
Well, it's just this point of like it didn't ultimately improve our societal success, right? But it did work. It did exactly what the fuck we wanted.
It was a Band-Aid.
We felt miserable, and it put our body.
Fix.
And that's more of that old programming you're talking about, that indoctrination, right?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, so for me, and this...
What's the difference between taking a drug that works in 25 minutes to make me feel okay in my body and taking ibuprofen that worked in 25 minutes to make me feel okay in my body?
Because in theory, you're taking the ibuprofen for something that's not a long-standing issue.
Yes. No, I agree.
If there's a long-standing issue, you need to get to the root of why you have pain.
I totally agree. But... just like when I had my shoulder surgery and they said, listen, you can choose to not take pain medicine, but your body is going to be so agitated in this area, it's not going to be able to heal. It's going to swell instead of healing, right? They said taking the pain medicine provides the environment for that part of your body to heal faster and feel better faster, right? I would agree, and that's what they're talking about with all this psychedelic research they're doing. They're saying that it speeds up the process of creating the new grooves in the brain, right? The new wired together neurons. And that's what it's doing. We're speeding up the ability for people to feel better faster. And if we'd have known, which I think we know now, if we'd have known when all these people were getting into drugs at, 15, 16, 17, whatever, that, oh, there's a bigger problem. It's not actually drug addiction. It's actually this fucking societal problem where we all just feel miserable inside. Maybe we could have started addressing that while they began using the drugs for quicker relief. And then they would be in a place of calm where they could actually hear and change. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of my first jobs as a therapist. You come in to see me. If you're dysregulated, we can't do anything. You're not going to hear any good ideas or think through your life. You have to get regulated first. And that's what drugs do. I mean, I'm not saying people should go use drugs and go to therapy. I'm just saying, like, I question our take on just drugs being bad. Like, they're doing a thing. That's why we're fucking doing them. They're providing relief. They're fixing the inside. I get it. It's not permanent and it leads to some shitty stuff, but that's where we need to be doing something else to get these people the right experience.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought it was an interesting statement of like, I just want to feel better faster. And I'm like, yes, that's what we're all doing. That's the goal.
And that's, I mean, I guess now we'll get way off, but that's where my support of like medicated assisted treatment comes in. Like if people were at a state where they're so, I don't know, damaged, hurt, whatever you want to call it, that they don't know how to like regulate and live without wanting to be outside of their fucking experience, we'll give them some temporary relief from that, but set them up with skills that are going to teach them how to deal with that long term. Like the long term solution should not be just medicate them and do nothing.
Yeah,
where I think some of those programs fall short is it needs to be followed up with like intense therapy. Is that sexual abuse therapy? Is that mental health therapy? Is that physical abuse therapy? Like what are the driving factors behind that? Let's get you to a safe place now with this medication and see if we can get you to a safe place without it. So I do have, at least I'll call it evidence. I don't know if it's evidence because I'm sure you'll dispute where it came from, but
always.
It said for kids, back to my point about kids, a 2012 national survey, American Attitudes on Substance Abuse, alcohol and cigarettes were the most readily available substance for youth 12 to 17, 50% and 44% respectively. Youth were least likely to report they could get marijuana within a day, 31%, and 45% reported that they were unable to get marijuana at all. So at least in 2012, half of the kids said they couldn't get marijuana.
It must
Definitely
be
questionable
very,
research.
Very.
You're surveying kids who don't want to get in trouble for using weed. I mean, how many of them are going to own to the fact that they know
But
where
they
to
don't want to
it?
get in trouble for drinking alcohol either.
A lot of people are probably more all right
I
with
bet
that.
it's regional.
I'm sure it is. I guess my questionable thing, one, on anything self-reported where you're talking about something that a person's not supposed to be doing, and they're especially under 18, that just makes it too risky for me to do self-reported surveys for under 18.
But
Here's
how
the
would you
other
do a
thing is-
survey on that? You're just going to video 50 million kids and see which one
No.
Track
could
them.
do what?
Track them all the time.
Why do we need to know?
With their phones.
Why do I need to know how much access there is for my child for marijuana? Why don't I just raise my child to feel good in their body and then they can do what they want? I can trust that I've raised them to take care of
Well, because
themselves.
we want evidence to show, like, all right, if this drug is more available and it becomes more widely used, and then they see higher levels of, like, schizophrenia or lower IQs, is there a causation there? Like, is there anything important there? Like, it's important to understand when we make these social decisions, like, what are the impacts of these things, and are there going to be results that we can look at and try to measure to see, like, hey, I mean, who knows? I could be completely wrong. Caroline might be completely right. We might legalize everything, and then all of a sudden people go to shit, and we all get stupid, and we all, fall apart. And then I'd be like, well, shit, we did that. I tried that, and it didn't work. But if we aren't paying attention to, is it the using that's causing it, or is it something else? We don't know what the cause is.
Well, and don't we want to know just based on the conversation? Like, don't we want to know because we were just talking about which is more accessible currently?
Right.
Like, that's, I mean,
out of an interested perspective, just out of curiosity, I want to know everything. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that I actually really care.
And how do we come to a
readily available.
solution to the problem if we don't even want to address the problem? Like, maybe the problem is there's early access, and maybe the solution is early education, more awareness with our kids and our families, more honest conversations around drugs and their impacts. But if we just ignore the fact and go, it doesn't matter if they can get it or not, we're not going to address the problem.
I feel fair, and maybe it doesn't matter because the alcohol access already is there to whatever degree it's there. But I'm pretty sure that they've found that there is correlation between the age when someone first starts using substances that help you change the way you
well, your
feel
brain's not fully developed.
and addiction.
Right.
So, the longer that you can keep a kid from drinking or taking mood-altering drugs, in theory, you're lessening their odds of having addiction issues.
Which
later
is
in
really
life.
describing that addicts use drugs sooner. Shocking.
Yeah. Correlation,
knew?
not causation.
We
Yes,
didn't
that's
feel
true.
well, and we knew it sooner than everyone else. I mean, teens have access to a whole lot of shit that I hope my teens don't particularly participate in, but I gotta hope that the job and the modeling I did for them, present it with them, the ability for them to choose what's right for their life in a healthy way.
When I just think from a practical experience for myself, marijuana and alcohol, easily available. Harder drugs, not so much until I got a little older. Cigarettes, easily available. Both my parents smoked. You know what I mean? So the things that were legal or a little more socially acceptable were definitely easier to get because more people were using them.
I don't know. I guess ease of access has never even occurred to me as like what I'm supposed to be focused on as a parent. Like it's never even, I mean, yeah, I make sure they can't get to the poison when they're little so they don't drink it and they don't know any better. But like my goal is that I'm sending them out into the world, whether that's at, 15, sending them to high school, or they've turned 18 and miraculously all of a sudden I can trust them to do whatever the fuck they want in their whole life, which I still don't or won't at 18. Like that day's not going to pass and I'm like, oh, they're 18 now. I totally have faith in their adult decision-making process. Like,
well,
so,
I think the idea, though, is that any drugs or anything that we influence into kids' brains, because any drugs do affect our brains, in some way or another, all differently, obviously, before their brains are fully developed, is that really good? Like, there should be some warning signs around that. Like, hey, maybe you want to hold, like this, the way we teach our kids is like, look, this stuff's going to be around. You're probably going to drink alcohol at some point in your life. You're probably going to, smoke, try cigarettes or do drugs. Maybe not. Maybe they'll never try them, and good for them. Me, my wife gets mad because I'm like, I don't know, go out and try it. Maybe you'll like it. Like, I don't know. I don't want to tell you not to. But there's risk there. You know what I mean? So we're honest with them about the risk. Like, well, why don't you wait till you're a little older? It's probably a little safer to do when you're, 21 is the legal age, but more like 25 because your brain's still growing until you're 25. And if you can just hold off as long as possible, like that's probably healthier.
and I don't disagree with that, but then I present the situation of my wonderful daughter, Jackie, who in 9th and 10th grade missed most of her school years from suicide attempts that we had to go get her stomach pumped. We had to go to these emergency room visits. We had to keep taking her to places and facilities that would keep her safe for a few days just to send her home on some new medications and for it all to recur all over again. And us fighting against her sneaking out and putting herself in dangerous situations in the middle of the night with a grown adult men that she had never met before, right? Like all these dangerous, fucking terrible behaviors. And, fighting against like her using marijuana in the house from time to time and shit like this, to the point that she ended up having to leave the house and go live somewhere else with a friend. Like, and now here we are. She's in her junior year. We have assisted her with getting a medical marijuana card. She can follow the rules. She can do the dishes. She's passing all her classes and going to be able to play basketball this year. And it's like, we can sit here and have this wonderful debate about access to marijuana for teenagers and how it fucks up their brains. And I'm not trying to fuck up anybody's brains. I get it. I'm not saying that's not real, but I'm looking at my real life anecdotal evidence and saying, thank fucking God weed's available.
Right, but there's some things there that you mentioned that I think are important and I think actually need to be pushed a little more, is like the medical card and like medical understanding and education on when that's going to be practical for kids and when it's not. You know what I mean? Just, it's like an ADHD medication. I think they fucking dole out ADHD medicine like candy to kids, and it's not healthy. The difference being now we're talking about making it just legal, which means it's what might not be in my house, my parents had a liquor cabinet that was not locked or anything. It was just a cabinet in the house that had a bunch of bottles of fucking whiskey in it. They didn't drink regularly, so we would sneak in there and drink the alcohol and like nobody knew because they didn't go into it daily. And, if weed is available to kids like that, the likelihood that that's going to happen goes way up. Now, are there people that it's going to benefit from? 100%. Mm-hmm. We know marijuana's helped. I think it's children with, what's that, where you have seizures and stuff? Epilepsy. It's been very helpful for kids that have cancer and things like that. So it's definitely got a place. It definitely has some very therapeutic and medically important uses for kids, even for young people. So there are going to be times where a drug is the best choice, even though it's not optimal. But to just make it readily available, that's a little different to me.
Right, but I guess the point that it doesn't really blow my mind, but it just makes me not really tuned into this teenager argument about marijuana. Is the fact that we will sit here nationwide and have debates about marijuana changing the chemical makeup of the brain in underage people, but we won't talk about the first 2 years of life and the gestation period that has way fucking more ability to change the chemical makeup of your brain and impacts the course of your life. But to do that, we would actually have to as parents do something different or believe in something different in the way we acted around our families. And like, we don't want to have that discussion, because that discussion, if we can take care of all the ways we're fucking up our kids from, conception to 2 years old, we probably don't need the discussion about weed, because nobody needs to fucking use it anymore at 13 or 14 or 15. Like, it's these conditions that are changing the brain originally that are leading to the brain to need something else to feel okay.
I mean, I just never really latch on to the worry about the kids. So
Thank God for me.
Fair enough.
Because I don't give a fuck about the kids today either.
One thing and this was not necessarily something I'd considered prior to digging into this, but found pretty interesting, was the concept of like people driving impaired on marijuana.
Really?
I remember one time driving on marijuana and spent like an hour just being totally lost. I don't think I was unsafe. So I mean, I think back in the days that I was
like 32 seconds.
No, it was a long time. But people saying like things about like, or maybe it was a study. Maybe it was a study I heard about, like they did in England, where drivers on marijuana would pull up to a roundabout and just like never go into the roundabout. And so the mentality is like you're overly cautious. You are afraid to act.
Mm-hmm.
And the justification at the time is, marijuana's better. So I'd heard that, but what I hadn't really thought about, and whether that's true or not, I mean, I think there's some studies that show that that's the case, but then also the decreased reaction time, the inability or the difficulty currently that exists with cops' abilities to determine if someone is on pot.
Like there's no blood alcohol breathalyzer.
Exactly. So that's what kind of came up to me as I was doing this, because without that potential threat, there's really very minimal deterrent to doing it. Right?
So we need a weedalizer.
Yeah.
Yeah, way to measure.
Right. Because I mean, as far as I know, there's nothing right now.
You won't need to measure.
You get an eye chart with the
blood.
blood.
No, you do, though, because if you're going to
eyes.
arrest someone, you have to have concrete evidence that they've committed a crime.
Well, but they were going 15 miles an hour on the highway.
That in itself is the crime.
We knew already. Like, I mean, you could, I don't know.
He laughed when we pulled him over.
Right.
Stopped giggling.
He had brownie all over his face. Yeah, there'll be signs. So honestly, if I try to think of drawbacks for legalizing recreational marijuana, now take into consideration for this, like I'm already aware that we have legalized alcohol that is absolutely, I don't say it's the devil, but I mean it does
bad.
A lot of damage to our society, really, in physical ways to your body, but also in probably ways you interact with those around you and damage them too. Considering that is already legal and we are not going to change that because we already tried to once and fuck that, nobody was for it. Yeah, why isn't weed legal? Like, I definitely prefer weed over alcohol, safety-wise.
I've always felt like weed was definitely less harmful.
Yeah.
Directly less dangerous. I mean, because I remember, like, I would drink alcohol. I would set out in the beginning of the night and be like, all right, I'm going to just have one or two and, it's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I started drinking, like
9 later.
Yeah, I wouldn't remember what the fuck I did or would do shit that was totally crazy. And I never did that kind of stuff when I was just smoking weed. Like, it wasn't like weed totally impaired my brain to the point of making completely irrational decisions.
Well, and I think one of the things research-wise that really sways me the direction of weed would be the amount of increase in, like, violent crime and sexual assault when compared with alcohol and weed. Like, people aren't out there robbing banks and raping people on weed generally. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, right? But I mean, alcohol like increases those chances so much, and it's like, that just doesn't seem right.
Well, and that's one of the questions I had, because I've vaguely heard this as a criticism, but I couldn't find any evidence to support or dispute it, is that in these states that they've already recreationally legalized it, that alcohol consumption or alcohol-related crimes have not gone down, that they've maintained the same. Now, I've heard that. I don't know from where, and I tried to find some research on both, either way, and I couldn't find any research. But that's what I've heard. I've heard, like, in Colorado is the one everybody always cites, that their, like, alcohol use or alcohol problems haven't gone away. We've just added a new thing. And one of the arguments for legalizing was that, hey, we'll get people away from alcohol and over here to weed. And I'm sure that's happened to some degree, but it hasn't reduced the problem with alcohol.
Yeah, so I mean, some of the website we were looking at had like, pros and cons, and it talked about how traffic deaths and arrests for DUIs don't increase and may decrease. And then, it talks about how they dropped 11%, but then the con was traffic accidents and deaths increase when marijuana is legalized. And that's so confusing. And they talk about Colorado as well. And it's like, well, what does that mean? If you've found research that means both.
Well, and this may be part of it, because I think this might even be the same study. I found a thing that said while the total number of crashes declined from 2007 to 2011, the number of fatal crashes with drivers testing positive for marijuana rose sharply. And that's from probably that same Colorado study. They did like a research to see what impacts it was having. And I guess I get what they're saying. The point to me was, well, yeah, if you tell people they're allowed to smoke it, they're going to smoke it. That doesn't necessarily mean that was the cause of the accident. It's a little different with marijuana, because I can smoke marijuana today and it can still be in my system on Wednesday. Whereas most of the time with alcohol, that's not the case. Like if I drink alcohol today, even 2-3 drinks, by tomorrow, it's going to be out of my system. So if I went out tomorrow and got in a fatal accident, that would not be alcohol related.
Well,
that's a valid
point
to
measure.
Too. Yeah.
Well, and I would say also another point would be like, okay, marijuana was in their system, but was alcohol also in their system?
Right.
Because people who are used to drinking alcohol and driving and then who throw marijuana on top probably are going to crash. That's a big difference.
I think the just comparing those two statistics, the reduction is much more powerful than the fact that, like, okay, of the people that died, 11% of them happened to have smoked pot in the last 30 days.
Right. Yeah, that's where that measure, and that's why I wasn't holding on to that statistic for anything. I just saw it in there, and the first thing I thought was, yeah, because more people are allowed to smoke weed, so of course more people are going to have weed in their system.
Right.
I have also heard the argument that it doesn't really reduce the black market impact or the drug cartels' impact on the drug market. What typically happens is the cartels just find a way to enter the legal drug market, and then they're just selling their same products legally. So, the argument that it will hurt drug cartels and this black market seems to be contradicted there, because, one, there's always going to be a black market, because there just will be for everything. And now how much influence or how much power that black market has, again, to me, if you just deregulate everything and let people just do whatever they want, then we don't need a black market.
Right. Give it all away free. There's no purpose for a black market unless they're paying you to take it.
Is there a potential downside of legalizing marijuana where the drug dealers and cartels that are focused on marijuana then shift their focus and attention towards harder drugs, which are still illegal, and further saturate the market with more and more heroin and cocaine?
I would imagine they're fucking pumping out as much as they can. There doesn't seem to be a overabundance in supply in the market.
But you have to figure, there's entire infrastructure systems set up towards getting
just for the marijuana part.
Here.
Yeah, that's true.
If you put those guys out of business, what are they going to do? Easiest solution is, okay, well, let's start selling cocaine now. Let's start selling heroin.
What I thought of when Billy said that the cartels would enter the legal market, I'm like, well, these rich-ass cartels that have been swimming in millions since they've been selling drugs anyway, they probably already have legal businesses, places. Like, I don't know that them being in the legal pot market is going to make them any worse or
we
better.
Find a way to just tax that revenue, and then
at least we're getting a cut of it, or at least maybe then they have to act a little more respectable because they're a legitimate businessman.
Yeah, the point there, I guess, was in California. I guess even though they had some legalization laws, they're still having issues with cartels sneaking over the border, and a lot of these grow sites and things that are happening within California. And I didn't study that specific area enough, but there's still this illegal market where they're circumventing the taxes and all that stuff, and now there's not as much prosecution of any of that, so the cartels are kind of almost or were for a while, were being left kind of to just do carte blanche with these big grow operations out in the woods in California. So now they've recognized that. So now they've called in the National Guard to start going out trying to find and shut down some of these illegal cartel operations, because they thought legalizing it would make it go away, and it has not.
Well, but I think that's a learning curve, right? Okay, we implemented it. We do this. Cartels still exist. Well, how can we adjust it to make it so that they don't? Right. You know what I mean? Do we need to make it cheaper? Do we need to make it more accessible store? Like, you know what I mean? There's got to be some aspect of it that's keeping the cartel able to undercut what they're doing.
Right.
Keep going lower.
But I think even when you think of like moonshine, like, is there a market for illegal moonshine?
Yes.
I guess that exists.
There is, actually.
But is it as huge as like the black market drug? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, no, it's not near the same as what we see in the drug trade.
So if we take these like $1 billion cartels and just make them $1 million cartels, all right, fine, fuck it. That's still a good thing.
Might not be terrible.
Yeah,
I don't think they would agree with that.
Who, the cartels?
Yeah,
Oh, I don't even.
They're going to look for another way to bring in revenue.
Okay.
So what does that look like? What's the downstream effects of that?
We can figure that out when we get there. Doesn't make it the wrong decision. I mean, eventually, if you remove the ability to gain anything by doing it illegally, then nobody would do it illegally, right? If you can't possibly sell illegal weed cheaper than the legal weed, there would be no point. You know what I mean? So at some point, there's a factor that takes them out of the equation. I don't know what that is, but if you legalize it and that's not the factor, then you go for another factor.
Right. But again, my point is then they move into other markets.
Well, at some point, after you legalize everything, they have nothing else to do.
Right.
So they got to
start
do a
selling
job.
organs.
All right. Well, don't come for mine. You're only going to get a half rate one. That's all I'm saying.
So I guess this comes from some, and again, I'm not going to cite off the specific research unless you want me to. It says independent research reveals that in the Netherlands, where marijuana was commercialized and sold openly at coffee shops, marijuana use among young adults increased almost 300%.
I would wonder, like, the only negative that keeps getting pointed out is that more people are doing it. Nobody said that, like, quality of life has gone down or that, you know, things have gotten worse or crime went up. So I guess I just don't look at more people do it as necessarily an automatic negative.
Well, the one
and I feel like that's what we're
point I had on
as.
here about adolescence, and I didn't read it, but it is a negative. It says in studies they've done with kids that smoke pot, it lowers IQs. And I have to go back. I wasn't
IQs.
trying to make that argument. I'm just, you're bringing up what a negative thing would be, and that was one of them. And I was just like, I don't know how you're measuring.
Is that bad if we're all happier? Honestly, if all of our IQs in the general population over the next 10 years went down by 5 points, and yet all of us increased by 25% life happiness, isn't that a good trade-off?
But I guess that's the point of the states that have legalized it. Like, we haven't seen happier. Like in Colorado, like their crime rates haven't dropped drastically, or their society norms haven't gone somewhere else. You know, the tax revenue hasn't exploded to where they're just building brand new parks and schools everywhere. Like, all these things that they said we were going to get, they're getting, but they're not having this great positive impact on the state. And I still think it's worth doing. I'm just saying, they went into it with this euphoria of like, oh, we're going to legalize this drug. We're going to get all these taxes. It's going to lower all this crime. It's going to get people off alcohol. And now they're seeing, well, that's not necessarily how this looks.
Okay.
And it's still got some positive impacts for the community, I think. It's just not this utopia idea that we thought it would be.
Right. No, and I get that. But those, I think, are still like the outward signs, right? Like, okay, we didn't get this great tax windfall to build all these wonderful structures or anything, but like, are people in general just happier? Are there more people saying hello to each other as they walk through the grocery store? Is there more conversations between people happening that probably never would have took place if they weren't on the marijuana or whatever, right? Like, is it calming everybody's nervous system to a point where we're all actually just enjoying the experience of life more?
Do you say hello to everyone you see in the grocery store?
No, I don't. But I think my life would be better if I said hi to more of them. I think I would feel more a part of life. I think I would run into them again at another store and be like, oh my God, hey. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have that in my life. And I feel like that's part of what keeps me from more connection. So maybe, and we probably should have done this at like, the 20-minute mark, not the hour and 20-minute mark. But let me just run down the pros and cons, and I will leave a space. If there's something y'all want to say about one of them, I'll try to leave a space in between each one so you can hop in there and say it. If not, we'll just go to the next one. And these are seemingly polar for the pros and cons. So I'm not going to give all the tips about it, but like the pro, marijuana legalization boosts the economy. Okay, that sounds good. Then the con to that, there's some research that says that somewhere, it backs it up. The con is legalized marijuana creates steep costs for society and taxpayers that far outweigh its tax revenues, which doesn't explain what those are. Oh, increased emergency room visits, medical care, and addiction treatment for weed. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
Should we vote? Should we vote for which one we agree with more after each one?
Yeah, that makes sense. Which one do you believe out of those two? Because these are all like polarized opposites with the same numbers.
Well, and this is where I'd say I don't know.
You don't think either are true?
Yeah. I was going to say, or that they're not either necessarily wrong. You're going to have increased costs with addiction and treatment stuff, but you're also going to have increased tax revenue. So now I don't fucking know the math to know which one's going to offset the other to know what's a net win, but they're both true. Like they're both going to happen.
I hold on to the pro because I say this money is already being spent anyway. We're just missing out on the taxes.
Well, and I didn't bring this up, but one of the arguments I read actually was that what happens is most people that are smoking either cigarettes or alcohol will actually, if they go to marijuana, you're just taking a tax from one place and getting it somewhere else. So you're going to lose revenue from those areas.
I don't think of I can see that with going from alcohol to marijuana. I don't see that with cigarettes to marijuana.
I don't think people are
people don't
their
quit
nicotine
smoking for anything. I know that, goddammit. I still have my vape. Which one did you believe in?
I don't buy the increased cost all that much. I don't think people are going to the ER a ton. They're just sitting at their house.
They're not going to the ER.
Right. Yeah, I don't.
I agree. So. I think the taxes would outweigh it.
Okay. Pro 2. Legalizing marijuana results in decreased teen marijuana usage, according to Washington University School of Medicine when they did their study. But then the con is legalizing marijuana increases use by teens with harmful results, which is a different study that's from Colorado. Which one do you believe?
I would have believed the decreasing prior to Billy reading that study about access, because that wasn't my experience. My experience was it was harder to get alcohol than marijuana.
Right.
So now I don't know.
Which one do you believe, Billy?
Oh, I mean, if I agree more, I'd say with the con that it's going to increase usage in adolescents.
I honestly don't believe the con, but I don't believe the pro either. I don't think it's going to increase or decrease. I think the people that need it are going to still use it. That's my belief. All right. Pro 3.
Well, can I ask I'll try to paraphrase this in a simple way. So in high school, did you know more people that drank alcohol or more people that smoked weed?
More people that smoked weed.
Oh, see,
I was a weed smoker.
Totally the opposite, though.
But you're up here in a rural-ass country area, and I was down there in the middle of the city.
I wasn't in the city. So
I don't know if that
might
makes
have been
a
harder
difference,
to get out here. Yeah, that's probably true.
It seemed pretty fucking easy to me. I don't know. Everybody I hung out with smoked weed. We drank from time to time. I mean, really, the honest answer is probably both. Yeah, we did both. We did all of it.
I dropped out of high school after 10th grade and only hung out. I was in GT classes.
I'm thinking of high school parties and shit like that people did. It was out in cornfields too, but most of that was centered around drinking more so than drugs. So anyway.
Okay. Pro 3. Traffic deaths and arrests for DUIs do not increase and may decrease when marijuana is legalized. Con 3 says traffic accidents and deaths increase when marijuana is legalized. Which one of those do you believe? Since the research says both, apparently.
I'm with the pro on that.
I would say they do not increase, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with that. I think if you offer weed, DUIs for alcohol go down.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure that they'll go down, but I agree that they won't go up.
Yeah, I'm with Billy on that.
It says may go down.
I'm hopeful they go down.
Yeah, you would hope so.
I mean, at least a couple people are going to switch over. Not everybody, but a couple people. A couple people are going to be like, I ain't driving on alcohol no more because I don't drink alcohol no more.
Right.
Both is better.
Pro 4, legal marijuana is regulated for consumer safety. Con 4, marijuana is addictive and dependence on the drug will increase with legalization.
I agree to both. I mean, I think it's definitely better that it's regulated and, people know what they're taking. Like, I think that's a definite healthy safety issue.
Do we believe it's addictive? That's an interesting question.
Yes.
I don't think it's any more addictive than anything else.
If you can be addicted to gambling, I don't know how you can't be addicted to marijuana.
Any more addictive than what else? Are you just comparing it to other addictive substances?
Yeah.
No.
Not as addictive as heroin.
I'm saying marijuana is no more addictive than Little Debbie. That's what I'm saying.
Little Debbie's can be pretty goddamn addictive.
Okay.
I mean,
Addictive
sugar
for
is
people.
very addictive.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing with that, but it's also legal and we don't question it ever. So that's my point.
Mhm.
It's no more dangerous than any of these other things that we keep in our cabinets. We're not worried about our children's fucking tasty cake and Twix usage.
But to
right?
me, that's a total detriment. I don't want to go off on that tangent, but yes, that is
That's
a
an
fucking
issue.
detriment
Yeah.
to our whole society,
Yeah.
our health and well-being.
No,
But anyway.
I absolutely agree. I'm just saying, like, we
Yeah.
won't have the debate about whether we're
Right.
allowed to have sugary treats in our fucking cupboards, but we'll sit here and debate whether we're allowed to have weed or not. And that's where I'm like, we're definitely changing people's brains with all the fucking sugar we're getting.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you said anything. I was like, choose?
Sorry.
Like-
I mean, maybe if you got a shopping problem. All right. Pro 5. Legalization of marijuana is phasing out black markets and taking money away from drug cartels, organized crime, and street gangs. Con 5. The black market and organized crime benefit from marijuana legalization.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Just rationally, I can't imagine any way people who sell illegal things can benefit from us legalizing them.
I think that article was saying that they'll undercut the prices.
Okay, and maybe they do, but they were
That doesn't
already selling
benefit.
stuff. Right,
Yeah,
that
well,
makes
that's not
that
a
means they're making
benefit,
less off
right.
each.
Right.
Or they move to another industry. Okay, that's fine, and I can't help that, but it doesn't actually do anything for them to legalize weed, I don't think. That's my take, at least.
I just don't know that I agree with the pro.
yeah, that's where I was at, too. I don't know that I agree with the pro.
See, that's interesting. I don't always actually think of what the pro's saying. I just think it's not the con. Con's fucking
Which
stupid.
you have no bias going
Right.
into this.
Yeah, not at all. The enforcement of marijuana prohibition, this is Pro 6, is racist because people of color are disproportionately impacted. Con 6, legalizing marijuana leads to more marijuana-related medical emergencies. What the fuck is a marijuana-related medical emergency?
Right.
Literally,
I can't get off the couch. Can you help me up?
I mean, that's what I think of as those calls they play online where,
Right,
like,
where the people
somebody
are
called
all crazy.
911 and they're like, I ate an edible and my car won't start.
Right. Someone stop the time.
Right. And I'm like, what the fuck?
But that is, I mean, that's using resources. If
We
they're
can handle
making
that.
those dumbass calls.
we can handle
So,
that.
and not to, yeah, that gets back to the whole, with no sort of understanding of what people are taking. I mean, marijuana can be a hallucinogenic. It is a mild hallucinogenic. So if you take too much, you can definitely freak out.
But I don't know. To me, like, okay, I'm the 911 dispatcher. I've had all these fucking traumatic calls all day. That's improved my life. I'm like, we can handle this. That just made my fucking
That's
day.
fair.
We're good.
I mean, that's fair.
you know,
Yeah.
we're good now. We've all connected. It's great.
Job satisfaction and
Just happier people,
But I
right?
would say I agree more with the pro there.
Yeah.
I definitely, that's one of my major points of wanting to change some of these laws is that, yeah, our drug policy sucks.
It's not my major point. I think my main point is just why the fuck can't we? But I think it's a huge point, honestly. And to agree with you here, like, it's ridiculous how disproportionately and minorities are impacted by drug enforcement laws.
yeah, but at a broad level, right? What about marijuana specifically? Because I hear that
Same.
and I think, yes, our entire criminal justice system is set up for disadvantaged people to fail.
I went to jail
Insane.
for a year for possession of marijuana.
Yeah.
You're not a minority, Billy.
No, but I'm just saying the laws are fucking stupid.
Well, he was
Yeah,
a
and I was
minority
a
in
white
Cecil
guy,
County.
which means I got probably the benefit of being a white male.
You did, but you were a minority here. You were a weed smoker. That made you the minority. You were different than
Yeah.
them. Just looking at what I know of traffic stops and what happens to white people versus what happens to black people, like, yeah, white people are getting, you shouldn't smoke that weed. Give me it. I'm throwing it out the car. I'm going to stomp on it into the ground. Black people are getting charges and locked up. Like, That's what I see happen. And I can't say I'm there every time to see that, but
In Cecil County, I never had them throw my weed out and stomp it out. I got arrested every fucking time.
it's because they were bored up here. They didn't have any black people to pick on.
But I definitely agree. I mean, the laws are systemically racist, and the application of them in cities has been horrendous.
Pro 7, crime goes down when marijuana is legalized. Con 7, marijuana use harms the brain, and legalization will increase mental health problems.
I'm definitely on the pro with this one.
The argument it makes is that there's decreased crime in the neighborhoods where dispensaries are located because of their security presence.
Yeah, I think I did read that.
That's not actually what I thought.
I don't know that I agree with that. Crime goes down.
I'm going to agree.
There was
I think
another
what I've
study
read that like saying
somewhere.
Colorado said that's not true.
I picture crime going down more for the drugs that more crime is done for. I don't feel like people do a ton of crime to get weed money. Like people do crimes to get heroin and cocaine money or meth money. Like I just don't see the
And
relation.
legalizing weed is not going to stop someone from doing heroin. Like that's not a good argument.
No, but the alcohol piece. If it keeps people from drinking as much and they're incapacitated on the couch, they're not out being foolish and
I think it's just a natural byproduct of more people doing it is more people are happy in our society. Not even just the people doing it. Like again,
you need me to introduce you to some sad pot smokers because I know
it never
quite a
made me
few.
happy.
No, I need you to introduce your sad pot smokers to therapy.
Okay.
That's what I need you to do.
Gotcha.
I want to help these people.
I know a couple of really depressed pot smokers.
Just made me paranoid.
I can't imagine. I don't believe crime goes up with legalized weed.
I don't think it goes up.
Right. I can't imagine any possible way where it doesn't drop by at least one motherfucker eventually. Like at some point, somebody's going to be a little happier, whether that's from doing it or their partner's doing it and they just get treated better or their boss does it and they have a better work life. Like somebody's going to stop committing crimes.
Well, and if you eliminate, I mean, if you group possession into crimes, then it significantly drops, right? Because now we're not prosecuting people for the possession of marijuana.
All right. Legalizing marijuana would end the costly enforcement of marijuana laws and free up police resources. Or the con, marijuana harms the health of users and people around them.
Well,
I don't give a fuck about the health of the people who use it or those around them, honestly.
Yeah, I think, and that was all about like smoke, the detrimental effects of smoking.
Yeah, well,
which is
and
a
that's
weak
what
argument, I feel like.
I don't like that argument either.
As long as people are educated that what they're doing has an impact on their body and their health.
I've always hated the secondhand smoke.
But the first one, I definitely agree with.
Stupid.
I mean, for
not the secondhand smoke. I'm thinking of the person who smokes it themselves. Like you are damaging your lung tissues and.
No, I agree with that. But I've always hated the secondhand smoke science argument because it doesn't make any sense to me. Because we always want to say secondhand smoke is worse than firsthand smoke, but the only way you can compare those two is in the same quantity. And in no way, nobody around me with secondhand smoke is getting as much smoke as I am. It's never going to be as bad for anybody else. I just think we blew that shit way out of proportion. I'm not saying it's better. Like, I don't really want to smell cigarettes. I don't like them, but I've never liked the argument for it. I thought it was stupid. Pro 9. Marijuana is less harmful than alcohol and tobacco, which are already legal. Con 9. Commercialized marijuana will end a big marijuana will create a big marijuana industry that exploits people for profit and targets children's. Fuck it.
I kind of agree with both of those. I mean, it almost, I thought about that. It makes that argument that, people that say that MATs are like legalized drug dealing. I mean, like, yeah, it kind of is in a way. And is legalizing marijuana going to create a whole industry like the alcohol industry, big alcohol and the gambling casinos and that whole big industry that exploits people, we're going to have another exploitative industry.
Well, yeah. I don't agree with the pro on this, to be honest with you.
What was the pro again? It's
marijuana is less harmful, which are already legal. Like that's basically like default.
Good reason to do something.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
That's where my standpoint is. That's not a good reason to do it.
Right.
Like that's a good reason if you're already deciding to do it, not to hold you up from doing it.
Right.
But that's not a good reason to do it. But yeah, we will have exploited children, unfortunately. We're just going to have to live with that. It's a cost I'm willing to pay. All right, Pro 10. Taxes collected from the legal sale of marijuana support important public programs. Con 10, legalizing marijuana hurts businesses by causing preventable accidents and lost productivity.
I do think the lost productivity is a real thing.
I think they're stretching for fucking reasons at this point.
Yeah, now we're down to
I think
like
all
10.
of them are stupid.
Now we're really stretching. But I agree. I think lost productivity.
Do you?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. We can all be less productive. I'm tired of productivity being the measurement of our worth anyway. It's fucking dumb. So, I mean, we go through all these pros and cons. They're obviously getting down to nitpicky stuff. I mean, I don't know. None of them just stand out to me as being a huge deal one way or the other. Like, I just can't see this being so negative that we all need to fear it. Like, okay, what if we do it and in 20 years we decide it wasn't that great and we go back? Like, I don't think we've lost a lot. I don't think some huge negative consequence has taken over our society and we're all like lost and can't fix it. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that big of a deal.
Yeah, it doesn't to me either. I mean, it seems like we should have done this long ago. And even, when I was actively using, I always was painfully aware that marijuana was way less damaging to me than alcohol, and like, why is this even illegal? And like, say, I ended up getting a criminal record and going to jail for a year over possession of marijuana. And I was just like, this is so fucking dumb. They're taking away my freedom.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I'd be telling a very different story if it was heroin. But yeah, I mean, pot is...
I mean, it would definitely be a different conversation if this was a drug that we look at as a harder drug or anything. But I mean, we've already seen this be legalized in quite a few states recreationally, and like in general,
the world has not come to a
life
screeching
has not
halt.
changed at all.
Well,
honestly.
that's what the biggest thing is that most of what people swore was going to happen, good or bad, kind of hasn't. It's just things have rolled along, and there's been some minor, increases in tax revenue, and it's people are still living their lives, and nothing's fell apart.
Yeah. Yeah, so fuck it. Go out there, vote the way you think makes the most sense for our society, for your community, and stay safe till next week. Did you like this episode? Share it with people you think might get something out of it. Check out the rest of our episodes at recoverysortof.com. Also, while you're there, you can find ways to link up with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, anything. We're always looking for new ideas. Got an idea you want us to look into? Reach out to us.